Today, we're going to talk about 6 foods that you should never eat. And I know it sounds scary, and that's okay. I want you to be scared because there are things that we are all totally used to eating that we should not be eating because it's killing us. Let's jump right in. The very first one is something called trans fat. And let me tell you what trans fat is. There's 2 kinds of trans fat. One that's naturally produced in animals. We're not talking about that kind. We're talking about the kind that's artificially produced by companies because it's easier and cheaper. So what these companies decided was that they found that if you take a hydrogen molecule or atom and they put it to vegetable oil, it makes it more solid. And when it makes it more solid, it's easier to use, it's cheap, and it's long lasting. So think of the McDonald's French fries or any French fries. I don't want McDonald's to be mad at me. Any of those big French fries, commercial fryers, think of the oil there. You know that if you use oil in your kitchen, you can't keep reusing it over and over again. It gets gross. But the oil in these commercial fryers stays there forever. That's trans fat. So they found a way to make the oil last forever, cheaper, and easier to use. But of course, it's bad for you. But nobody cares about that. So what does it do? It will lower your good cholesterol. So you're out here trying to eat the good stuff. This will lower it. It will raise the bad stuff. Of course, it's connected to type 2 diabetes and causes inflammation. And it's overall just toxic. It's so toxic, in fact, that the FDA in 2018 finally said this statement: a reduction in the amount of trans fat in the American diet could prevent an additional 20,000 heart attacks and 7,000 deaths from heart disease each year. So it is so toxic that the FDA, which really doesn't get involved that much, finally realized that we should ban this. So what do? They banned it. All right, E. So if they banned it in 2018, why are you still talking about it? I'm still talking about it because, of course, there's a loophole. What? A loophole in our labeling system? It can't be. Well, there is. And let me tell you this loophole because it will drive you bananas. So the loophole is that you can write that you have 0 trans fat on a product as long as it has less than 0.5 trans fat per serving. Okay, big deal. 0, 0.5, who cares? Well, let me give it to you this way. It adds up. Remember that little bit of poison I told you about? So you take a box of crackers. You take 10 crackers, that's a serving size. That has 0.5 grams of trans fat in it. Okay, 10 crackers, no big deal. Well, if you eat a whole box of crackers in a month, which is not unreasonable, an entire month to eat a box of crackers, and then you eat 1 box a month, in 1 year, you got 60 grams of trans fat in your system. And that's just crackers. So you can imagine what's happening everywhere else. So 0 is not 0.5. And I feel like that should be on a t-shirt. 0 is not 0.5. It will make sense to no one except for you guys. And that's okay. So how do we find out what products actually have trans fat in them? If it says 0 trans fat, right here in this red, I want you to look at an ingredient list. If it says partially or hydrogenated soybean oil or coconut oil or cottonseed oil, so partially hydrogenated, that means they put the H, the hydrogen in there, or shortening, or anything that says mono and diglycerides, guess what? That's trans fat, so run away. And that is the first loophole of many that we're going to talk about. And what foods have them? You might, of course, you might say, well, I don't eat deep fried foods. I don't eat donuts. I don't eat French fries. Well, guess what? It's in everything. It's in crackers. It's in Flintstone vitamins. It's in nutritional bars. It's in popcorn. It's even in some peanut butters. You name it, it's in there. So read the label. Awesome. Let's move on to scary food number 2. You might be familiar with it. High fructose corn syrup, or HFCS. High fructose corn syrup. Did you know that Americans eat about 1/3 of a pound of sugar a day, which is 120 pounds of sugar in a year, which is a lot. And 35 pounds of that is from high fructose corn syrup. So we should really talk about what high fructose corn syrup is because we are eating a lot of it. High fructose corn syrup is made from cornstarch, and they process it and they create this syrup that's filled with fructose. So you might say, fructose, Sounds natural, E. Fructose. It's in fruit. How bad could it be? Here's how it is. They purposely trick you, and you know I'm here to uncover all of that. So, if you have a banana or an apple, of course it has fructose in it, and it's okay. Because the conversation is you can't have too much fructose. There is no way that you're going to eat too many fruits that is going to raise your level of fructose. But what they do is they take that fructose and they jam it into the syrup, the high fructose corn syrup. And now you have this ridiculous amount of fructose in the syrup. Read poison bottle. Way more than you would ever consume just eating fruit. It's not going to happen just by eating fruit. So who cares? Why is it so bad? Fructose, a lot of fructose, a little bit of fructose. Who cares? Obviously, it's terrible for your health because if it's fast, cheap, and easy, it's going to be terrible for your health. And by the way, the reason they made it is because it's cheaper than sugar and it's easier to blend and stir into things than sugar, right? Sometimes when you're making something, if the sugar is not melted, it's a little hard to put in there. So high fructose sugar just makes it easy to blend into everything and it's cheaper than sugar. So they just dump it everywhere and they don't care that it's bad for you. And it is bad for you. It's bad for you. First of all, it makes you hungry. So you know what it's like when you're eating that cereal and you just keep having more cereal and more cereal and more cereal. And you're like, why am I not full? I finished half of the box of cereal. This is why. You're not full because the high fructose corn syrup keeps you hungry. It keeps you going. It makes you want to eat more. So guess what? That's connected to obesity, of course, and insulin resistance, and something called leptin resistance, which gets you heavier, increases your triglycerides, raises the bad cholesterol, creates fatty liver. If you didn't watch my talk about fatty liver, I need you to watch it on Facebook or on YouTube. I need you to go in there and watch it because you could be scared further. Increases insulin resistance, which causes inflammation. Of course, you should watch my video on inflammation if you haven't already. And it drives up heart disease, aging, and is part of the connection to Alzheimer's. Yeah, scary stuff. And of course, it's found in cereals, baked goods, ice cream, soft drinks. And the crazy thing is, it's also found in things that aren't sweet. It's found in ketchup. It's found in crackers. It's everywhere. So how do I find it, E? You're scared me. Where do I find it? Well, sometimes if you're lucky, it'll say high fructose corn syrup or HFCS. But of course, there's a loophole. And I'm going to tell you about that loophole. It turns out that you can say the word natural anywhere you want on a product because it is not FDA regulated. It could be the most unnatural thing in the world, and you can say natural because there's no regulation around the word natural. So if it says natural, you probably should be skeptical. And one of the ways they get around writing high fructose corn syrup is that they can write natural fructose or natural fructose syrup. So if you see that, run. Okay. And you'll be able to run because you're not having the high fructose corn syrup. Moving on to number 3, preservatives. Preservatives are things that make our food look good, last longer. And it's not all bad because we've been preserving foods throughout time. Sometimes people caught a fish and they didn't eat it the same day. How did they preserve it for the next day? So salting foods was common. And then we moved on to canning foods or pickling foods. All of that is preserving foods and all of that is okay. But of course, we all got very savvy and we decided to preserve our food with chemicals because it made them last longer, which made it more affordable and cheaper to store. And guess what? Nobody cares that it's bad for you. So these chemicals that are added to your food so that they stay looking good, smelling good, and last longer on the shelf, it's actually poison. Now, there are so many poisons that I cannot even begin to list them. So I'm going to talk to you about 2 of my faves. And by favorites, I mean not favorites. So the first one is something called BHT or BHA. And these are put into foods to prevent them from spoiling. And you might see something on the label that says preserve freshness. Preserve freshness means run for your life. That's what that means. It's found in cereal, gum, snacks, beer. And of course, they're both linked to cancer. They're called endocrine disruptors, which means they mess with their hormones. They're known to affect the nervous system in children and cause behavioral problems. And if you don't think they're bad, guess what? They're banned in Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. But of course, here, it's still going strong. Why not? Let's just have it. Another one I want to bring to your mind is sulfites. Sulfites are added to foods. It is the top 10 most common food allergen. It is so disruptive that it's in the top 10 list. Yeah, we put it on food everywhere. Sulfite sensitive people can have hives, rash, red, itchy skin, anxiety, rapid heartbeat. It worsens asthma. So it's so much fun. Here's another fun fact. In 1986, the FDA realized how bad it was. So they banned it, but only banned it from putting on fruits and vegetables. So before 1986, they actually put sulfites on fruits and vegetables to make them look good and last longer on the shelf. And people were having so many reactions to it. So they banned the use only on fruits and vegetables, but you can put it anywhere you want in regular food, in processed foods, because the FDA said they are generally recognized as safe. It's a whole category called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. So the FDA said they're safe. Yeah, they still insist that the companies put it on their label, and they banned using it on fruits and vegetables. So it's super safe, but please warn people to use it and don't use it on fruits and vegetables. Suspicious? I don't know. Is it suspicious? Just a little bit. So what to look for on your labels? You have to look for anything that says sulfur dioxide, potassium bisulfite, sodium bisulfite, or sodium sulfite. Run away from it, please. And by the way, I put the word nitrite in here because it's just as bad. So remove those as well. But I didn't want to get into it because I don't want this talk to be an hour. And of course, I have to tell you about the amazing preservative label loophole, because it's really annoying and it's really crazy and it makes me bananas every time I see this loophole. So no preservative added. That sounds good, E. No preservative added. It just means no synthetic preservatives are added, but the product could be full of artificial colors. So no preservative added, run. And the word no additives just means that nothing was added in the final process of your processed food, but it could be in the early stages of the processed food. You could add additives and preservatives as much as you want, but as long as it's not there in that last bit of processing, you could write no additives. So if they're writing no additives, there's probably additives in there. Okay, move on to number 4. Ultra processed foods. Sounds cool, but it's not. Ultra processed foods. So processed food is any food that goes under a process, right? So some process is good, but ultra processed is bad. Let me explain. It takes it to a whole new level. Ultra processed foods are those foods that have no food in it. You're looking at the bag and you're like, I cannot pronounce anything here. And if you try to make it at home, you don't have the chemicals in your kitchen. I hope not, because then don't invite me over. But if you have these chemicals in the kitchen, something's wrong. So think of it like this. Corn, that's natural. Canned corn is processed. You take the corn off the ear and you put it in the can. It's a process, but it's an okay process. Corn chips has nothing to do with corn. That's just a made up ultra processed food. If you look at the ingredients in corn chips, you cannot make this at home. That's ultra processed food. They're super high in calories. They have zero nutritional value. They're just a hot mess. Think about your pre-made rice dishes, your pre-made pasta dishes, the pre-made meals, the ones that all you have to do is add water and put it in the microwave. Those are ultra processed foods. They pack so many calories per bite that you end up eating so many more calories than you would have if you made it yourself, which leads to obesity. So they're not designed with health in mind, and they're just designed to have you buy more and more and more of them. These foods are linked to obesity, and they are linked to high blood pressure. They are linked to cancer. Eating 10% more ultra-processed food increases your risk of heart disease, cardiovascular disease by 10%. You add 50%, you go up by 50%. It's kind of a 1-to-1. So take a look at that. We don't want to be eating ultra-processed food. One of the ways of doing that is just shop the perimeter of your supermarket. Have you ever noticed that the outside perimeter of your supermarket has the fresh stuff, the vegetables, the dairy products, the breads? That's the perimeter. In the rows are basically your ultra processed foods. So try to stay away from that. Now, let me give you some amazing loophole tidbit, label loopholes, because I want to irritate you as much as I'm irritated. So here are the processed food label loopholes. Anything that says natural, I need you to know the word natural is not regulated in any way. Anything you want to write natural on can be natural. I need you to think it's for that to sink in, because some people say, but it says natural. Natural means nothing in the FDA world. Anyone can write it. Okay. So if it says natural, probably not natural. If it says made with real fruit juice, if they have a vat of nonsense and they put 1 drop of real fruit juice in it, guess what? It's made with real fruit juice. And the same thing with whole grain. If you have 1 whole grain in your entire production line, you can say that it's made with whole grain. So eat that. Artificial sweeteners is our next one up. Artificial sweeteners. This is an interesting one because a lot of people think that they're doing the right thing by taking artificial sweetener. Why? Because it's not sugar. It's sugar-free. We keep hearing sugar is bad for us, so artificial sweetener must be good for us, right? Wrong. They're on the list. In fact, most artificial sweeteners were discovered by accident during experiments for other things. And the scientists sometimes would taste something in their mouth and say, hey, that's sweet. Let's see if we can take this weird byproduct of a scientific experiment and turn it into something we could sell as an artificial sweetener. And that's the story behind most artificial sweeteners. So enjoy that when you put that in your coffee. So initially when they came out, they thought they discovered, the next best thing because it was sugar-free. And if you put artificial sweetener, they thought they were doing the right thing. But of course, it's not the case because it is so sweet that it stimulates the brain, it affects your hormones, and it starts messing your metabolism in ways that they never imagined. And of course, it disrupts the bacteria of your gut. Artificial sweeteners are linked to depression, anxiety, weight gain, cancer, especially aspartame. Run away from aspartame. Headaches, migraines, stroke, dementia, memory loss. And they do this thing called a cephalic insulin response, which means I have the artificial sweetener. My brain says, this is a sweet thing. Sugar must be coming. And it starts to release a lot of insulin because it thinks a lot of sugar is coming. But the sugar never comes because it's an artificial sweetener. So now your body has all this insulin waiting for food. And guess what? It makes you hungrier. So studies have shown that people who drink artificial sweeteners are more likely to be overweight, more likely to have diabetes. Seems counterintuitive, but it's actually what it shows. The more diet soda a person drinks, the more they're linked to obesity. Something to consider. Now, the thing about these labels, I didn't put a little section about the labels because it's tricky. The labels will put the chemical, right? Aspartame might be in there, but there's no way for you to know that it's sweetened with aspartame. So if you don't know the name of the chemical, you might not know that it's a sweetener. So there's a push now to have products have to say the words sweetened with aspartame or sweetened with whatever chemical of their choice. But right now we don't have that. So we have to get really savvy around all the names of the artificial sweeteners. If you really need a sugar substitute, you're really trying to do your best, consider stevia is the least of the worst, or monk fruit, or date sugar, or dried fruit. So far, so good. And we're heading over to our last one. Number 6 of dangerous foods that you should never eat is pesticides. And pesticides are hard to get around. Every year, the Environmental Working Group, I put it here, the ewg.org, releases a list called the Dirty Dozen. And it's the Dirty Dozen, the top fruits and vegetables that have the most pesticide in it. This year, strawberry and spinach come in ranking 1 and 2, which is really annoying because you're out here trying to make your smoothie and you ended up making a smoothie full of pesticides. You're trying to do the right thing and they still get you anyway. So it's super annoying. And the pesticides can just irritate your skin, your eyes, or they can affect the nervous system. They're, again, hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors. They mess with hormones. they're carcinogens, some of them. So they're a hot mess. And I'll tell you what we need to do. So you're out here trying to eat the rainbow and you end up getting a rainbow full of pesticides. So should that be a t-shirt? Rainbow full of pesticides? I don't know. I don't know why I'm making merch while we're talking, but things to consider. Let me know what you think. Now, there are some washes that you can use to get rid of pesticides, but it's a problem. The fruits and vegetables have pores in them. So the pesticides get into the pores. So even washing them doesn't do well. And then the product that you're washing with is also a chemical, which again goes into the fruit and vegetables. So it's really hard to get the pesticides out once they're in. We're going to talk about the pesticide label loophole. And the pesticide label loophole, of course, is that you can say pesticide free. It's a term that the FDA does not regulate. So go ahead and write pesticide free on anything you want. Write it on your shoes, write it on your gel, write it anywhere you want, because the FDA does not regulate that term. So there's no certification process. There's no process that exists for you to be able to write pesticide free on your product. Instead, when you're shopping for fruits and vegetables, I want you to shop for things that say organic on the label. This is just about fruits and vegetables, not about processed food. Your fruits and vegetables should be organic because that term is regulated and verified. So the best way to avoid pesticides is to search for things that say organic on it. So let's recap. These are the 6 foods that I need you to avoid: trans fat, high fructose corn syrup, ultra processed foods, preservatives, artificial sweeteners, and pesticides. And of course, a lot of this is overwhelming and there is so much to know. So if you want to work with us, drop the word call below or send us a message at The New Method or thenewmethod.com, because we're here and we want to help you become the game changer in your life. Because why? Because you always knew there was a better way. And I will see you guys next week.